Aloha everyone, this is Philip Ong with an update today from the most recent findings of the USGS and other observations we've had from the flow field. Starting off here in Fern Forest, let's see if my signal is good enough that any of you guys see this and join in. So thanks once again for tuning in and for all your support. And I see a lot of you guys have contributed to our cause recently, so thank you so much. We really appreciate it. We're so honored to be part of the coverage and serving a useful need for you guys. So thank you so much for your support. Hi everyone who's just joining. Looks like my connection is good enough for the live from right here, so that's awesome. Good to see. Just starting a update this morning. We're going to talk today about a couple of things. Our typical recap of the new information from the eruption, and then also make All right, okay, I'm back to green. Hi guys, I got a little connection issue here. I'll move if I have to once again. But thanks everyone for joining. Just getting started here. Doing an update from home today, so I can spend more time with the kids later on. So that's also important, of course. But in the news today, of course, is the USGS report that was released yesterday. We'll talk about that here shortly as well. We'll also kind of cover what's happening with the latest changes in eruption. Maybe the first thing to start with is about half an hour ago, we had our collapse event here at Halemaumau Summit, about 9:45-ish, something like that. I personally felt the shaking here at home. That's not too bad where I live, but around 9:44, 9:45. The report from the county says 9:49, so somewhere in there was the collapse event. So we're expecting a surge down at Fissure 8, beginning in maybe half an hour or so, 10:45. The last couple have reached there in about an hour, so that's probably the best thing to expect now, is in about an hour. The collapse pulse to actually reach Fissure 8. Can you guys all see and hear me now? I had a little connection issue a little earlier, but I haven't seen any orange warning yet, so I'll keep going where I am now, and if I have to, I'll walk across my deck to the other side. See if that helps things, but I probably won't do that until I see the orange warning, because that'll be closer to the kids, and they like to play loud, so that's all good. Anyways, just getting started here, you guys. Our first order of news this morning is we just had a collapse event at Halemaumau at around 9:45 or so. There is a surge expected at Fissure 8, probably only around 10:45 or so. So these surges, the last surge we had documented lasted about an hour and 20 minutes. So probably that's what we should expect. Okay, so anyone still having trouble seeing me? I can try to move if I have to, but I'll wait for maybe a couple more complaints if that's the case. Keep going where I am now. So yeah, I'm not sure if Ken posted his video, but yeah, he shared with us a video this morning. He happened to turn on his video recording just as that 5.3 hit. I'm assuming it's 5.3. Actually, I haven't honestly looked. 5.3, 5.4, they've all been so consistent. But yeah, so that's the first thing that happened. So anyone down in the Leilani area around Fissure 8, we should expect a pulse to come in about 10:45 or so. What we've seen, the pattern the last couple of days, is that the surge works its way down the channel system. So it might actually be reaching further than that kind of throughout the course of the day, right? So we actually, the one, I suppose, clearest event with the best timing that we've seen, maybe suggested that it might take something like up to 12 hours for the surge to work its way all the way down to the ocean entry. So we'll probably watch, that'll probably be what's developing all day today, is how that surge actually comes through. First hitting Fissure 8 we expect in about half an hour or so, and working its way down the channel. You know, if it lasts, let's say, an hour or 20 minutes up at Fissure 8, then, you know, that's kind of the beginning point, and then, you know, we might see surging down farther in the area of Noni Farms Road, possibly, you know, a couple hours after that, and eventually we'll see that pulse reaching down by the ocean entry, and that's probably what concerns a lot of us who are still kind of on edge at the fate of our boat ramp, which as of this morning is still there. The flow has not moved closer to Pohuiki in the last couple of days. The river of lava that's going in the ocean at Halanui is huge. It's gigantic. So it's not good that it's that close to Pohuiki, but it has held on another day, another night. So we'll have to wait and see what happens as far as that pulse reaching down at the ocean. But as far as this morning, there is no change at Pohuiki. Starting on that, let me show you guys, there's been a new thermal map that's been released. So let me pull that up for you guys here on my outdoor setup here. Let me get it a little more organized. So, okay, here we are. All right. So here is our thermal image. A little glare. Let's see if I can fix that. No, it's not any better. Maybe like that. Here's our new thermal map. It was released this is from a couple days ago at 6 a.m. So this is when the lava channel actually swung away from Pohuiki the first morning after the surge that had happened the previous night. So this image is probably capturing some of that surge overflows and there, I'm back to green. All right, guys. Yeah, if I see the orange pop up, I'll just take a little break and see what I can do to get reestablished here. But looks like I'm back here. All right. Okay. So let's starting on our thermal map. So here's our thermal map showing the status as it was 6 a.m. A couple of days ago. So the surge had come through just a few hours before that, overnight. So earlier the previous day, we had maybe some small overflows in the area kind of through here. You can see a little bit of this lighter patch right in there. Zoom that in for you guys. You can see a little easier. So like there's an older recent overflow, and you can see there's a couple areas of hot over here on the edge of the map. You have some other recent overflows that happened from the fissure area, but farther up on all right, green. You guys with me again? I had to move, I think. All right, so I moved. Let's see if that helps. And let's see if that helps the feed here. So I'm back to my usual spot at the house, and hopefully that'll help out here. Hopefully that'll improve here shortly, you guys. Let's see. Any better for you guys? I'm back to green on my thing. I had to move So you guys might hear the kids possibly, but they're back inside at least. All right, guys. So let me start over this thermal update. Sorry for the low signal quality here. So okay, here we go. Oh, there's a lot more glare here. Let's fix this. Just a minute. There. Is that better? Not really. Hold on, guys. I'm gonna find a way to make this work. No. Really bright out here. I'm trying to figure out how to get the glare not to show so much. Whoops. That wasn't it. All right, I think that'll work. All right, guys, thanks for bearing with me. No, I don't have tephra on my roof. I just live in the rainforest where near a lot of ohia trees. No tephra. I got a lot of ohia trees right here right above me, so that's kind of what falls on my roof. So I'm far enough away. I only had a few Pele's hairs falling up here on the deck, but not that many. Not nearly as much as anyone down in Puna. So, okay, here we go. Here's our thermal map. And sorry for the glare, you guys. Let's see. I had this going pretty good earlier, but all right. So basically to recap, not a whole lot of spillovers on the upper part of the channel, some small ones in some areas. We have an area of ponding still right at our curve right around here. So that's definitely an area that still remains of concern because we still have Cinderland and Noni Farms Road, Papaya Farms Road over in this direction over here. Well, more this way for Noni and Papaya Farms, but this way for Cinderland. And so this area still remains an area of threat, but for now it's actually contained within an area of spillovers, recent spillovers. And in this map that was released a couple days ago, we can see the main ocean entry is actually fairly well established in the upper channel up until around here. And then right in here, it kind of gets crusted over. So when you're looking at the actual photographs, we don't see as much red exposed in this area over here visually, unless it's actually like at night. But this is where the main channel is actually flowing. You can see from this imagery right here how hot it is all the way to the ocean right in here. And this image also shows, let me zoom it in so my pointer is not quite so giant. It also shows down in here, well, that's too much glare. Here, let's do it like this again. All right. Shows this lobe that had moved to the south, right, towards Pohoiki right through here. That made it within a quarter mile of the boat ramp. That flow is still hot on the inside, but it's actually not advancing, hasn't advanced for the last couple of days. And the main entry is shifted farther away from here. So just for comparison, let me pull up the last thermal image from 2 days prior to that. All right, so here's a couple days before that. All right, let me scroll up and show you guys June 17th, 6 a.m. All right, so you can see how the entry is pointing basically straight down to the south, closer to Pohoiki. An image released a couple of days later, you can see it's shifted slightly to the north, so I can kind of go back and forth a couple of times if you guys want to see how it shifted slightly, right? So that's where we've kind of been holding out our tiniest sliver of hope here, is on that slight shift that's put most of the flow here to the north. But what I've been warning about is that, of course, if you look up here, you see how much this flow is spread out side to side, right? This thing is probably at least quarter mile wide. So if the flow is within a quarter mile, then having that big a flow, if it swings just a tiny bit, then it could easily put lava towards Pohoiki a little more easily. So I'm still very nervous. You know, it seems like, you know, if this activity continues, this thing keeps shifting over, then it does appear that Pohoiki's days are numbered. But it's kind of still a long, drawn-out process, and, you know, we have to see if something else changes before that creep over actually reaches the boat ramp or not. So we'll see about that. Nothing to do but to wait. You know, this image, just to reiterate, is a couple of days old now, but we have seen an ocean entry channel stay established in the same spot for the last couple of days consistently. The issue now is that when a surge comes through within the next 12 hours or so, will it come back through and just stay in this area, or will it spread it out farther over to the sides, or how will that actually change? So the last couple so far have actually kept it on the recent lava flows without going on and burning any new uncovered land. So that's kind of where we're holding out hope for Pohoiki is on that. There are a couple of images that were released from Ikaika's boat trip this morning. Actually, it was Andrew Dunn running a trip, but posted on Ikaika's feed, and also some other imagery from the ocean. And I haven't seen any morning aerial photographs so far, but when I do come in, I expect them to show a similar thing. So I'm not expecting any change to happen down at the Pohoiki area this morning, but this afternoon is when we're going to start watching and see how that pulse affects that downstream area of the channel, and whether it's going to get closer to the boat ramp, and whether we'll have to keep track of it more closely at that point, or whether it's going to keep going in the ocean in the same spot where it's been the last couple of days. So that's our Pohoiki update, and for you guys who are just kind of catching up to us now, we did have a collapse event at about 9:45 or so, and it's been almost 45 minutes now, so we expect another 15 minutes at the soonest to have the surge reaching Fissure 8, and once it reaches there, it might last something like an hour and 20, hour and a half, in that area, and that pulse will work its way down the channel system, which is now 7.5 miles long, which is amazing to think about. When I've had the chance to be invited to go up in a helicopter, whether it's with Paradise or with Scott Wilson at Aloha Skies, it's amazing. You get up there in the air and you look down, and you can't even see the whole eruption in one field of view. So that's how huge it is, 7.5 miles long from its initial output down here, all the way up and around, and wrapping all the way down. It's actually slightly shorter than it was before. It used to be more like 8 hours, or I'm sorry, 8 miles. When it came around this side, a slightly longer path to go around and do that kind of entry over there. So it's slightly shorter, but it's still really long. And yeah, that's it takes a while for that surge to work its way down the whole system and get all the way down to here. So, in about 15 minutes or so, we might start seeing effects in this area over here. Then, it'll kind of surge and it'll move down. It'll be like a fat area. If it surges for an hour and a half, then kind of start surging, then it'll stop surging down here, then a surge will kind of move through as a pulse all the way down the system, kind of like that. All right, so that's what we're looking at for today. So all right, I see you guys talking about the collapse events. Let's turn and look at those plots. So where do we have it here? Tow plots. All right, let me refresh my plot here and see what it shows. But here's our image for the last day. It's probably too zoomed out, really. We need to look a little more detail. So let's go to the past week plot, and what you see is our interval pattern going back to 15th over here. Collapse event. These collapse events were lasting on average, I want to say 31 hours or so, kind of for this later phase of it. And clearly it's lengthened the last 3. So we had, I want to say something like 36 or 37, maybe another something like that, 36, 37. I want to say that today's might have been more like a 41 hour or so interval. So the intervals, the last 3 have been lengthening, and that is interesting to note. If it stays at a longer pattern, that's something that we've kind of discussed, the possibility of that being an indication of the summit collapses starting to slow down. I'm trying to warn everyone that when these natural earth processes, the volcano is so huge, the forces are so huge that a slowdown, even if it were to shut itself all the way off, might take weeks for that to kind of come about, for that change to come about. Weeks, and possibly longer than that. So, but of course, we are looking for any sign of change towards the decrease of this, and that's something we'll talk about shortly as well when we talk about the USGS report, which we will do here. So, well, I see Nathan is commenting. Thanks, Nathan. So, he's been doing a best compilation as far as intervals. The intervals were about 31 hours apart for 11 events. And then for the last 7, they're a bit over 35 hours. So they have been consistently larger. Some of those events within the last 7 have been on a shorter end, but of course, average with these larger ones, then ends up being that what did he just write? 35-hour average. All right, so that pattern's there. Maybe it's a little easier to see if we look at the month-long plot. Let's just look at the part that's kind of since the instrument adjustment. You can see these, how short these are. You know, that one's slightly longer, kind of slightly shorter, 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 shorter. That one's definitely longer, shorter, 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 a little bit longer, a little bit longer, a little bit longer, and then this is the longest one we had so far. So it's kind of hard to see on a tilt plot. And if I get way in on here, you guys can see there's actually a blue line going up to right around in there, which as the plot updates will be easier to see. That's the event. I did see a gap in the tilt meters yesterday, so there might be actually some glitch in the update over there. So we will keep an eye on those tilt meters, but the data is still coming in, and we're pretty sure that that's the real event based on everyone's videos. The felt reports across the volcano area. So maybe the tilt meters are just still kind of catching up. So let's see, what else do we have over here? There are some new images on the USGS website, which are pretty nice, but there's actually nothing new to glean out of there that we haven't said. And since we have other things to talk about today, I'm gonna kind of skip over that. And let me just recap what I have open over here to see if there's something else that's particularly relevant to show you guys today. We're kind of seeing similar patterns. Don't need to show you guys an earthquake map. It looks pretty much the same. One thing that we can report is a visual difference around Fissure 8. If any of you guys are watching the webcam, you might notice that it's hard to see the fountains of lava inside of Fissure 8 nowadays. So according to USGS reports, the actual amount of lava that's coming out has not changed. It's just on average, I should say, because clearly at some points there's more and at other points there's less, right? So, but on average, they are saying it has not changed, and that's the best information we have to go on, right? So, kind of sticking with it. One thing that's also been reported, so thank you guys that are at Hawaii Tracker who are kind of keeping me updated as we do this. There was a video that was put out by Gabe Humphreys a couple days ago that was, I thought, very informative in showing people how the pulses actually come through. In his video, something that I hadn't quite taken notice of before is the fact that there are pulses of gas that are being emitted before the pulses of lava come out. So that was kind of focusing on a pulsing event, and in fact, the USGS has acknowledged that they do see pulses on a timeline of perhaps 6 to 8 minutes, variations in a pulses of lava coming out, so slightly more than slightly less. These are different from what I'm calling the surges, right? And I'm still suggesting that we kind of separate these things, from the big surges following these big collapse events to the more subtle pulsing that we see. That are on the order of 6 or 8 minutes or so, compared to, for example, like the 1 hour and 20-minute surge that we're talking about. So, it's really interesting, to think about how that might actually be changing what's happening at the vent of Fissure 8. One of the key, I promise we will talk about the USGS report here shortly, but one of the key things that is probably worth talking about is how much lava is coming out of Fissure 8, and what those variations may actually mean. It's hard to say just from the height of the fountain that the amount of lava coming out is less. We could also look at some other things like the amount of lava in the channels. That has varied quite a bit as well. It seems like it's not that low, and when the pulses come through, we're seeing the overflows. The amount of lava coming out into the ocean still seems to be huge, so that's interesting as well. I mentioned in one of my last updates how we have a particular pattern of how eruptions progress. Normally they begin with a fissure event. So the magma is coming up through the ground. It breaks the ground. It breaks the ground in long linear cracks, right? It doesn't punch a circular hole through the ground. It actually cracks it in a big line, just like everything else. All the materials that we experience, how they break. The magma comes up through the crack, basically because the gases within it have bubbled up and they're growing and expanding and causing a lot of pressure. So the gases are basically getting burped out of there, and the lava shoots out of there. But quite often, once the lava is out of the ground, whether it's lava draining back into the crack or lava coming up through the crack, somehow there's an easiest path for the lava to kind of come through. So quite often, when fissure eruptions of events that last a while begin, the fissures don't stay open for the whole eruption. They, at some point, will kind of focus to a single spot, somewhere where the width of the fissure is the widest, right, where the gas can get out the most easily. And that spot kind of becomes the main vent. So typically what we see in past eruptions is fissures that might, on Kīlauea be typically 1 or 2 or more miles long. They would shoot lava in the air, on an order of maybe 100, 200 feet or so. And then typically they kind of zip up to a single spot. And in this case, it's fissure 8. And quite often the fountains in that spot actually increase quite a bit, right? That's usually how we have our when we have high fountaining events. And just to kind of recap what geologists call a high fountaining event. High fountaining meaning over 1,000 feet. So the fountains that we've seen have been giant for us from our human perspective on the ground, but geologically, the highest fountain reported from the fissure is in the order, a few hundred feet, not anywhere near 1,000. So according to our typical understanding, we actually did not have a high fountain phase in this event that we have going on now, this eruption of 2018 here in Hawaii. So typically, so kind of to recap, our first stage would be fissures. The second phase might be higher fountains. So we haven't had huge high fountains. We actually had, a big enough vent that is being able to kind of just pour out of there without shooting up super high on an order of 1,000 feet. And then typically at some point later on, if eruption lasts long enough, and for example, we have the eruption of Mauna Ulu from 69 to 74. There was high fountaining in 1969 and 1970, but by 1971 we had switched to lava lakes, and then we had lava lakes and spillovers from that area. In Pu'o'o, we had high fountains from 83 to 86, before we had a fissure break open about a mile east of there, at a place now called Kupayanaha. And it had a lava lake. It began as fissures and switched to a lava lake as well. So that's the typical progression. Once you kind of vent off some significant amount of the gas that's been built up, you kind of switch to having a more constantly bubbling lava lake instead of having the episodic fountains. And that's another interesting thing too, is when we had high fountainings at Pu'o'o, it was typically on average about once a month or so. So it wasn't like it would be erupting 1,000 feet in the air constantly for months at a time, like Fissure 8's been doing. It would put almost like a geyser. It would fountain up, and it might last something like a day or so. Then it would back off, rebuild pressure, and then do it again and again and again, so that in the end, the amount of, I haven't done any math, but the amount of lava coming out might have actually been somewhat, on average, the same. It's just not shooting quite as high and then backing off. It's just kind of constantly gushing, coming out nonstop from Fissure 8. So that's the sequence of it. And then the last thing I mentioned, was talking about the last update was, how whenever this does end, however long it does last, that when a magma withdraws, you often have sagging of the ground and some cracking and craters and collapses also potentially occurring as well. So that's just kind of to recap the sequence once again. I'm sure you guys don't mind hearing it one more time, but that's kind of the order of it. And I bring that up because we're talking about Fissure 8, how its fountains have decreased, right? And, just the fact that fountains decrease in and of itself doesn't mean that the amount of lava coming out has decreased itself. It could just be a property of how much gas has been built up, how much has been vented, how easy it can get out, how easy it's mixed into the lava, right? Because the gas may actually still be there in the same amount, but kind of if it's stirred into the batter, so to speak, right? So it's evenly all the way through, then you're not going to have as, that unevenness of the eruption as much, right? So that's kind of the important point there, is that, there could be just as much gas coming out, it could be coming out in a slightly different way, and that might be actually what's leading to the differences, visual differences, and the fountain heights that we see. And so it's probably more important to kind of keep track of those channel levels, which has also been tricky because of the fluctuations we've seen recently, but that's kind of where we're coming from as scientists, trying to keep our finger on a pulse of this thing and what's actually going on. Well, maybe that wasn't the best use of words, the pulse of it, but to kind of, figure out, keep track of the changes happening in eruption. Maybe pulse is a good term after all, who knows? So, yeah, so that's kind of the take on Fissure 8. I see you guys have been typing out a huge amount of questions. I can't read them all as I talk, or I'd lose my train of thought, but let me go back here and see what I can comment on you guys over here. So, thank you guys for being chatty, but let me see. I'm going to go back a little ways to see here. Okay. I see people asking about Cinderland and Navale. Let's talk about that when we get to look at the USGS paper, which we will do shortly. But, as far as what the just kind of briefly, what the USGS has put out as far as their possibilities of what they're calling them lava sheds, that's the same thing we've been talking about for weeks already now. So that's all good. We talked about the tilt, collapse events. Here we go, USGS reports. I see Mott's asking me to shout out her husband. Hi, Mott's. Hi, Mott's husband. We are live indeed. Software problem for USGS. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, that typically happens. It's pretty amazing. We haven't talked, in times of non-eruption, we'd spend a lot of time talking about, how complex the USGS infrastructure is that allows them to collect data from all over the island in near real time, in fact. Maybe I'll see that for another day. I see more questions about the USGS report. We'll get to that too. People were asking me about my internet up here in Fern Forest. My internet normally is satellite, but there's a lag and there's a data limit that we always seem to hit. When I'm working on updating my app, it takes a lot of data, so I always go over my quota, unfortunately. So I've got to run this thing off of the cell signal, basically. So here we go. Steam puffs. Steam puffs are something that I don't have a good handle on right now. I'd like to know, probably to see the time-lapse events of the summit, I presume. Steam puffs that you guys are talking about. It could be that you guys are talking about Fissure 8 possibly as well. Fissure 8 has had changes in the gas coming out, so I haven't heard reports of a boom recently, but there have been reports of booms over most of the last week. Booms, gas, and then kind of extra pulse coming out. So we do know something like that is happening over there. That's kind of why I bring up this whole issue of the gas, how the gas is getting out of there as well, right? So, so there's that. Just puffs in themselves doesn't necessarily mean anything about the lava coming back up. It could just be the fact of how the gas gas bubbles have to collect to be a certain size before they can start venting, right? Similar to how when you're kind of boiling a pot of water, you get all those little bubbles that stick to the walls of the pot, and then only later when they start growing to join each other, do they get big enough and buoyant enough to come up all the way up to the top. So that's something that could well be happening. As well, the collapse events are actually opening pathways, moving the cracks a bit, so it's possible that when these collapses happen, that's when the gas can kind of burp out of there. So that's my take on that. So there we have it. As far as that goes, let me switch now to what I think you guys are going to want to talk about for a while, which is going to be this new report from the USGS, which has come out and made the news today. Came out yesterday, in fact, but I will only touched on it briefly. But for those of you guys want to find this, I haven't checked, but I would imagine it's right on each of your front page. It's also been shared around Facebook, and I'm pretty sure we shared it. I think there's a link on Hawaii Tracker's daily announcement up there as well, so you guys have different ways to find this as well. So I'm going to start off saying that the news reports have basically taken the whole range of possibilities of what could happen, and they've taken the most extreme view, which is a possibility, of course. And they've kind of focused on that headline. And the headlines that I've seen being USGS says eruption will last for years. So what I'd like to start off with is actually read the full sentence of what they wrote. I can actually even show it to you guys. I don't know if you guys will really want to read it on my maps or my screen. So here, I'll just read it for you guys. But this is on page 10 of this 15-page report, which I see someone has posted, so great, thanks. All right, so how's it, Ikaika? Ikaika is here with us. I'm gonna keep just gonna start off here reading what they say. So here's what the paragraph actually says. If the ongoing eruption maintains its current style of activity at a high eruption rate, then it may take months to a year or two to wind down. All right, so what the headlines are focusing on is it may take a year or two to wind down, right? Skipping the months option. Also skipping the if it maintains its current style at a high eruption rate, which is a huge if, of course, right? So absolutely, if nothing changes, if lava keeps coming out of the ground at the same amount as it's coming out now and nothing else changes, yeah, absolutely could last years, right? But we're all, of course, looking at all these changes that are coming through. It's quite possible that things do change, you know. My first reaction is, yeah, you know, we should all be aware of that possibility that it could last a while. You know, we've said that as a possibility for a while already. But we also have said that on average, most eruptions actually last months in the lower East Rift Zone. So I still don't see why we should back off of original thought process on that. I think that people should be prepared for the possibility that it takes a long time, you know. So I think that similar as I've been saying, you know, even if this eruption ends like next week, then the gases will come out for months afterwards, and even after that, it's going to take months for any infrastructure to be put back in place, and it could be that the following year there's another eruption in the same area because that area erupts a lot, right? It has not erupted a lot in the last 60 years, and that's kind of been an issue with development there. But long-term, that area erupts a lot. So whether it's one long-term eruption or whether it's going to take a break in between, whether it's going to actually have a pause or what have you, you know, the reality is that living in that area down there actually is a volcanic area, and you know things are going to be changing again and again and again. You know, so I don't disagree with the outlook that it might last years, but I think focusing only on the fact that it might last years is maybe not the right approach. You know, it maybe is an important approach when you're considering what to do long term with your property or what you want to. Whether you're going to live there or whether you're going to raise your kids there or what have you, you know, any of that kind of thing. But as far as this particular event in itself, you know, it's just more complicated than that, right? You just can't so easily say, just because the lava flow hasn't changed in a way that we see it slowing down yet, that means that it's not going to, right? So that's kind of my initial take on that. And we can go into more detail. You guys don't see me. I don't even have a warning on my thing. I don't have any orange or green or Anything, you guys? So I see you guys kind of commenting here, but I don't know if you guys are actually all able to see me or not. So let me see if I can stand up and get better reception here. All right, so glad to see you guys. Some of you guys can still see and hear me. Okay, all right. So I sent you an invite, but I don't know if he's going to be able to join us or not. So we'll see about that. But yeah, that's my initial first take on a report that came out and the headlines that kind of come along with it. So I think it's worth going into this in more detail because there's a lot of information in here. Obviously, 15 pages worth. So clearly, one sentence fragment is not enough to kind of sum up the whole point of what's going on in here. So maybe we can do that in just slightly more detail. And I won't go on super detail because you guys can go through and kind of read every word in there. But I kind of want to just kind of point out the outline of this thing and how more or less how it works. Okay, so let's see how we got going on here. All right, so officially the cooperative report to Hawaii County Civil Defense. So the first thing to take from that is that the USGS is trying to outlay all the possibilities for civil defense so that they can actually start making these plans for what might happen with changes in eruption. So this is great. This is kind of the exact thing that we've been doing for weeks, trying to, not as officially, obviously, and, not contributed by 50 scientists from the USGS. We've tried to warn you guys of the most likely possibilities of what's actually happening. So, introduction, they examine the possible and potential impacts, right? We examine here the possible and potential impacts of the ongoing eruption, right? So that's the key thing there, right? So the volume of lava exceeds that of many past eruptions, but we'll actually talk about those comparisons. They have an orientation map here on page 2. They have a summary of activity, kind of going into detail of what's happened, kind of different phases of the eruption. So that's useful as well for people who are, let's say, an emergency responder, kind of rotating into the area who's not from here and hasn't been here for a while. So that's kind of why this document is so complete. So let me kind of go down here. So summary, a couple interesting points. Oh yeah, here we go. Here's a title above this photograph. Ongoing hazards, right? So here's probably where it becomes relevant to what we're talking about today. Interesting point here. Upper 4 kilometers of the channel, that's 2.5 miles, upper 2.5 miles of the channel. So that puts it kind of between Fissure 8 and probably around a Y or so, somewhere in that area. Stands 16 to 22 meters above ground. Okay, that's about 50 to 75 feet above ground. All right, that's how high the actual river sits in its levees above the ground. And that is as much as 400 meters wide. That's about a quarter mile wide, right? So you guys who are focused on the numbers, here's those numbers as far as how perched above the ground that whole channel is on Leilani, and why we focus a lot of our worry on that upper section, and especially the first few weeks of that thing being established, about whether those channel walls would actually hold. So they have held for over a month already, so overflows over the top have happened, but we haven't had any of the major seeps that possibly could actually break out the channel wall, and for that we've all been very, very thankful, of course. They put out this map in a report, which is actually quite interesting. So what they basically have on here is in letters the areas of concern, Fissure 8, right? The area of the channel above the braids, the braided section, and then the big curve right around Pu'ukapoho, right over there. All right. So there is the layout. They also have mapped out what they're calling the lava sheds, right? Zone 1, or let's call it lava shed 1, being Leilani. Lava shed 2 being the area east of Nana Valley. Lava shed 3 being downhill there. towards the Va'a area. Lava shed 4 being Nana Valley states. 5, 6, and 7 area around Cinderland, and 8 being the area around a lighthouse north of the recent flows that covered most of Kapoho. So maybe worth talking about these details. Maybe I'll flip it around again so you guys don't get too dizzy with the glare in the map. But this is basically hazard-wise the part that if you guys are living nearby that you need to focus on. You know, talking about the hazards from each of these areas. So their hazard areas between upper channel between A and B, between Fissure 8 and the area of the braids. Any major flow caused by a breach of the west wall of the channel is likely to advance northeast into, I'm not going to call the numbers, I'm going to say into Leilani, hugging the northeast edge of the existing flow. Beyond the Highway 132, the flow may enter the area east of Nana Valley and become captured by steepest descent lines that pass east of Nana Valley along Road A and possibly Seaview Road. If the flow continues to advance, it will ultimately cross Railroad and Government Beach Road, enter Lava Shed 3. Here, I'm going to flip it around again. So, Zone 1, spill overs into Leilani from here. We knew about that. We've been talking about that for over a month already, right? Spilling over from Nauai, going east of Nana Valley. We've been talking about that for just as long as well, right? As the first threat towards the area. If it were to continue going this way, it ultimately could get down towards the area of Government Beach Road and Railroad, right? We talked about that as well. And if it kept going that way, being able to fatten out and then at that point reach Nana Valley. So all that is pretty much exactly what we've been talking about for the last month or so. All right, so that's great. It's great to see that, you know, we're not lying to you guys. That, you know, even our quick science version of what ends up being peer reviewed and analyzed by a bunch of people ends up being ultimately the same conclusion. You know, so just in that alone, I find value in putting out kind of a quick assessment of what might be happening, you know, just based on that. Right, so let's kind of keep going down here to this lower section. So, as they say it, if flow enters Lava Shed 2 installs, subsequent flows advancing on the west side of the stall flow could enter Lava Shed 4, that's Nana Valley, and ultimately reach the closer to Hawaiian Beach and Hawaiian Shore. So that's the same, right? So middle channel between B and C, the braided area. So if it becomes braided, if it becomes blocked, here, I'll turn it around so you guys don't have to try to read that wiggly screen there. I'll read it for you guys. If one of the narrow sections becomes blocked by large collapsed fragments from the channel wall or spatter cone, lava could be diverted out of the channel. In this scenario, if in a scenario part of the lava is directed to the north, then lava could go into Lava Sheds 5 or 6 Cinder Road area and threaten homes and infrastructure in the Noni Farms, Railroad, Papaya Farms, Government Beach Road area before entering the ocean between Kalamanu and the northern edge of 1960 flow. All right, so that's the same, you know. Nothing said about Kalapana, by the way. Lower channel, below C, that's the area kind of from the bend of Kapoho Cone down to the ocean. And basically, they say the A'a channel has been unstable. It's still oozing lava. The flow to the northeast of Kapoho Cone is still oozing lava, and it's not fed by any surface flow. It could possibly thicken and widen beyond the current margins, so that kind of pat of lava, the pancake to the east, is still kind of oozing and may still creep into areas that have been uncovered. But overall, it's not being fed. So the threat in that area is decreasing, even though there is still threat there. The real threat is down in area of Ahalanui, down to the south. So that's basically it. There's one other thing which is mentioned as a risk, which I'm not. Let me see if I can find it here. I'll mention it when I come across it. I don't want to. Yeah, okay. Here we go. Here's the area that I want to talk about as well. So here it's on page 5. The upper. So we talked about the width of the channel, how high it stands as well, but this is an important thing which we've talked about as well. We haven't really dwelt on it because we don't you know, there's no sign of something like this happening yet, but they do acknowledge the fact as well while we're on it, everything they're acknowledging all in one fell swoop. The main hazard from the source cone and a channel system is failure of the cone or channel walls or blockage of the channel where it divides into narrow braids. All right, so the key thing that they've acknowledged there is the cone can fail, right? And that's one of our more dangerous scenarios. If somehow where the lava comes out of fissure 8 going in a channel were to shift, that would be terrible, terrible. But there's no signs of that happening now. But just to kind of point out to you guys what this document actually is covering, every single possibility of what could happen, even if it doesn't seem likely at this point, right? Maybe I'll step back now, to, they're sitting there, they said this, are the sentence, just to if you guys, any of you guys are joining us a little late, or, wondering once again, where I've been going with all this, the USGS is acknowledging all the possibilities of what could happen in this report. They're not saying any of this thing's going to necessarily happen. I just want to lay it all out so that someone who's coming in government maybe has a better idea of what the outlook could actually be. But the sentence, on page 10, that's made the news this morning, I'll read you guys the whole sentence first. If the ongoing eruption maintains its current style of activity at a high eruption rate, then it may take months to a year or two to wind down. All right? So, that's what it says. The news headlines are running with, the USGS says this may take years, right? Ignoring the fact that it may take months, ignoring the fact that if it maintains its current style of activity, and if it maintains a high eruption rate, all right? So let me give you guys an analogy to maybe how this is going, right? People might say, if we keep dumping plastic into the ocean, the human species may go extinct. Okay? So now if I took that same headline and put it in a news, I could say, humans may go extinct, right? You can see how I'm taking that analogy and taking it to the far extreme of what could actually possibly happen, right? It doesn't mean that it will happen. It doesn't mean, it certainly means it could happen, right? If things don't change, in that particular situation, humans can change things, in this situation of the volcano here, the volcano is, in my mind, inevitably going to change, right? So to me, it all comes back to kind of cut to the chase here. The most important thing to me is the fact that the summit is still collapsing, right? It's collapsed a huge amount so far. It can't collapse infinitely into the center of the Earth. It's impossible, right? The amount of lava coming into the volcano is not matching. It's less than what's coming out of the volcano right now. So that can't sustain itself right there, right? So the way things are right now has to change. It has to change. There's no way it doesn't change. Now, it could change to a situation where it does come out for years and years, but it has to change for even that to happen, right? Also on the USGS report, maybe I can find for you guys what page it's actually on. Oh, yeah, it's actually on the same page, on page 10. It goes a little further. Where is it? The 2018 eruption has only erupted flows so far, but the eruption rate is high and the channel system is elevated by frequent spillovers. The flow maintains its character to the point of the ocean all along the edges. All right, so that's the real information. Then they say, the change in character of the channel towards Pahoehoe may signal a gradual change in eruption style and a potentially longer eruption with more destruction of infrastructure. So that tells you what they would be looking for, right? They would be looking for a change to Pahoehoe. If that happens, then that would be a sign of this thing possibly lasting longer, right? We have not seen that change yet, right? But even then, that's a change, right? That's a change in the eruption style and character of the eruption, right? So that's something that we need to be aware of and look for, right? So I think that's an important thing as well. We haven't seen that kind of change yet, all right? So let's see here. There are other parts of this paper here. Basically an appendix that goes the last 3 pages, comparisons to other eruptions. It compares it to 1840, right? This was witnessed by Reverend Titus Cone, 1841. And you guys who caught our update with Captain Kiko a couple nights ago, maybe heard us talking about how these events are not surprising, and they've happened before. In fact, I think it's kind of worth reading to you guys what Titus Cone actually wrote about this eruption, right? So he writes in 1840 about how the eruption started in Upper East Rift Zone and quickly migrated to a fissure just west of what's present-day Pahoa. So he writes, on Monday, June 1st, the stream began to flow off in a northeastern direction, and the following Wednesday, June 3rd, in the evening, the burning river reached the sea, having averaged about a half mile in its progress. Sometimes it's supposed to have moved 5 miles an hour, and at other times making no apparent progress, right? For 3 weeks, this terrific river disgorged itself into the sea with little abatement. So that's very similar to what we've seen, right? When we saw the flow moving towards Kapoho, it moved really fast, and it would stop and build up and kind of almost appear to stall. Then it would surge really fast, and then appear to stall, and then eventually got to the ocean and disgorged itself into the sea with little abatement this year as well, right? So it's very, very interesting to me to kind of see that as well. In fact, another interesting thing is that he talked about how in May of 1840, there was the whole caldera up, not just Halemaumau, but the whole Kīlauea caldera was just roiling with lava, right? In fact, he describes it as the whole area of the crater became one entire sea of ignifluous matter, raging like an old ocean when lashed into fury by a tempest. Right, so that's how I could look at the summit. We didn't see that. We saw little spillovers of a lava lake at Halemaumau, possibly because we had that lava lake actually able to release gas for 10 years. It was there, right? That open chimney releasing gas and the lake bubbling over and spilling over whenever it had to. But this time it was different because of that, possibly. And back then, maybe it didn't have that and it was able to build pressure and spill out all across the caldera floor. So the report also describes the comparison to 1924, to 1955, to 1960. And so those are things that are useful for you guys to read if you want to go into all the nuts and bolts. And, if you guys have particular questions, then I'll go into those later on as well. But for now, I think that's probably as much as we need to dig into those particular details as well. So that's basically it. So it is true, that the eruption could go on for years. It's as true as it's ever been. Everyone's been asking us, is this a new pu'o'o? And we've been saying, well, we're not sure it's going to last 35 years. And I think that's still true, right? Even their statement says it may take months to a year or 2 to wind down. All right, so that's what's actually written and published, right? And remember, it's preceded by the if it maintains its current style at a high eruption rate, which is also 2 things that are not quite clear. All right, so I think this this report does kind of, it should, if you guys are surprised by this at any point, for sure take notice, whether it's them saying it or me saying it, we say it in a slightly different way, it's all important. This could last for, a long time. Even if it doesn't last a long time continuously, lava coming out of the ground, there's going to be gases. There's going to be another eruption someday in a similar area right around there. Okay, so, long term, I think, maybe think of it as like the bubble has burst, right? That we were blessed to have seen and lived through and witnessed this almost 60-year period of stability in the lower East Rift Zone, thanks in large part to Pu'o'o keeping lava over in the national park, unfortunately for Royal Gardens in those early years, of course, and for Kalapana and Kaimu and Kamuamoa and all those other areas that, maybe have passed out of the memory of the current current eruption viewers, but, you know, we've lived this story before. Not in residential areas quite as large or as densely populated as Leilani. That's the big difference, right? So, so that's it. Let me see. Ikaika, you still with us, brother? I can try to get Ikaika in here again. I'm not sure if it's going to work. He was trying, but I'm not sure about his connection where he is, and I don't see him on here anymore. So, yeah, we'll just have to skip him for now. And so you guys, let me scroll up and see if I can, what kind of questions I can get from you guys. Hopefully I've kind of given you guys at least my take on what's going on, right? You know, it's always, as usual, up to you guys to judge all this information on your own, make decisions that are right for your own family, for your own situation, for your own health requirements, what have you. And, you know, kind of to you know, just reiterate, you know, it seems to me like while the headlines are technically include the information that was put out in the report, they've excluded the important qualifications that were put on there. You know, if it continues at this high rate, if it continues at the same eruption style, then it may take months to a year or two to wind down. All right, so, and you know, not to dwell on it, but you know, just to share with you guys again, you know, I mean, you could make an extreme headline like that about almost anything, right? So it is true that the length of this eruption, the amount of lava coming out of this eruption is unmatched by what we've seen in human, at least Western human history, right? We can argue about the earlier Hawaiian legends, in fact, of really whether this is that much bigger than there. You know, the thing about Western science is Western science can actually measure. The volume was this many million cubic meters, and you know, some of those older eruptions that we have in legend, we don't have those exact volumes. We can kind of look at the surface of the Earth today and see what the extent of the area of flows are. We can't tell how thick they are necessarily. Sometimes we can, but it's hard to get volumes in the older flows themselves. You know, so you know, just kind of reiterate. You know, if I were to say, oh, you know, my headline today could say humans may go extinct, right? So, yeah, that might happen, but it doesn't mean that it will, right? And, you know, maybe if nothing changes in the world ever again, then that might be the most likely thing, possibly, depending on your worldview, you know, or not. You know, what are the chances of something changing? I'd say they're probably pretty high, right? So, that's basically it. I will yeah, I did cover Pohuiki earlier in an update, so I'm going to wind it down here, get back to my family here, and let you guys digest this. You know, I think it's important to think about this, right? So absorb it in your own way, you know, make decisions in your way, on your own way based on this, right? If it hasn't struck you, like how, even if the amount of lava, even if the amount of time the lava comes out of the ground is limited, the impact of this eruption on everyone's lives in Puna is going to last the rest of our lives. I've been saying that for a while already, right? Whether it's the fact that you're going to live with the possibility of eruption, whether you're going to live with the gases, whether you're going to live with more earthquakes, is hard to say, right? So it's important if, you know, you haven't, I mean, you know, I think there probably is some, you know, some use to this, a little bit of the shock value, right? So, I mean, if it really did shock you that much, you know, take stock and, you know, listen to what I've been saying, listen to what USGS is saying, and, you know, yeah, I mean, think about it so much, you know, think about it for sure, because it's never going to be the same, right? I've been saying that for a while now, so if you're okay with that, all good, you know. We've talked about how, you know, it's perfectly fine. People live in dangerous places all the time, you know. So everyone's got to make their own decision there. But my point of view, don't panic, right? Nothing really that new, right? Apart from the USGS finally acknowledging, you know, maybe it's a quasi prediction, you know, which is also kind of new and exciting. So that makes me happy that they're actually got it all compiled and shared with everybody. And yeah, take it seriously. And we'll keep praying for Pohoiki, which is still not covered and looks good, at least until the next surge gets there, and then we'll have to wait and see. If something major happens down there, I'll come back on and give you guys any update that I have. Otherwise, you guys keep track of Hawaii Tracker. They've been putting out text updates, photo updates, as soon as something comes in and gets confirmed. So you guys can rely on them if you're not catching me live, or Ikaika live, or whatever else, yeah. And yeah, you guys, knowledge is power, so you guys get a lot more knowledge in that 15-page report. Use it to make good decisions, for sure. Do your long-term planning, yep. I did say humans may go extinct. Yep, that's true. You know, so just, that's the maybe what you guys take away from the context of this, you know, yeah, you know, something's got to change, for sure. If it doesn't change, then it could last a long time. But I still believe it has to change. It has to change because of the caldera, right? The caldera can't drop forever. So the amount of lava coming out of the ground can't stay the same forever. And at that point, we can look and say, okay, well, now it's erupting Pahoehoe, now it's going to last a long time. Or no, it's not coming out anymore, so it's winding down, or what have you, right? So, but something's going to change. We've been looking for that change for weeks now. It's going to take a while still. Possibly the slightly longer intervals that the summit collapses for the last 3 days, you know, possibly that's it. You know, first sign of that, you know, we have certainly seen the horizontal GPS slowdown that's moving, right? So there's that as well. You know, we may be seeing these changes happening in slow motion. We just can't see them yet because we wake up and look at the plot, you know, after nothing has really changed that much. All right, so there you have it. And, you know, just kind of to mention, you know, we put out our fundraising call on Hawaii Tracker yesterday, and, you know, thank you guys so much for all the amazing support you guys have shown us. If you haven't heard about it, check out hawaiitracker.com. Myself and Dane DuPont and Ryan Finley, who are the core of the, well, no, there are a lot more guys in Hawaii Tracker that do a lot of work, but for starters, our fundraising is targeting the 3 of us, and if we can get more funds in that, we'd love to support the other guys and gals who are contributing essentially nonstop every day to the Hawaii Tracker, helping us kind of compile all the various photographs and images and reports, which are awesome that you guys are all giving us so much information. It's too much for 1 or 2 people to handle and kind of compile all by themselves. You know, that's why it takes a lot of us. You know, these guys text me and update me on what's going on and correct my information as I'm presenting it. They give me information that I can't look up while I'm doing it. So there's all of that. Thank you guys so much for that. So if you guys are in a position to help us, we would really appreciate it. Check out hawaiitracker.com. We really appreciate it. There are some other projects we'd like, you know, if we're able to do, you know, if the funding is enough to do some extra stuff, we might talk about putting up some other kinds of cameras or monitoring situations, you know, be able to give you guys even more information than we have already. So thank you guys for everything. Thanks for supporting us. Just to reiterate, we're not asking for anything from anybody from Puna who's been displaced or affected by this. We really don't want to take, you know, this is not why we got into this. We got into this to help people understand and, you know, explain what's going on. But it has been 3 months. So we do have the reality of the kids crying inside or what have you, you know, our other life reminders, you know, our bills piling up on a desk and all that, and, you know, we're all hoping this ends as soon as possible. But the reality is, you know, even among us, right, you know, we've talked about this in the last month, well, this thing could drag out for months and months and months, right? So, and if that's the case, then we can't keep doing this the way it is now and not have the stress of our own lives kind of affect the work that we're doing. So, so thank you guys once again. HawaiiTracker.com once again. If you guys are able to help us out, we really appreciate it. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of other things that we could do, you know, and we'd love to get to that. But the first step is, you know, if you guys are willing to help us out, we really appreciate any donations you guys can make. Okay, guys, so thanks once again. I'm going to sign off now. Remember, use this knowledge, empower yourself, and everyone else, stay classy, Puna. Aloha.